All right, welcome back. Now for business organizations. So I have about 10 minutes left in the studio, so we'll see how much of this I can get done. I will probably come back to do the more detailed comparison, but we spent time on that in class, and you do need to understand that for the test. So they're basic forms. You've got a sole proprietorship. So if you were going to create your chart, and I just really don't have a good way to do that right here, let's see. If maybe, if it'll swap. Sometimes it cooperates, sometimes it doesn't. So let's see. Remember in class, I built this timeline and I put sole proprietorship, which is what this is, on this side. And I had the C Corp over here. And then we had partnerships. We had LPs. We had LLPs, LLCs, and then S corporations. So those are the basic entities, and you need to kind of understand how they fit together. But an individual proprietor is a sole proprietorship. You're doing business on your own, and any income you make goes through to your personal taxes, but the disadvantage is the unlimited personal liability. So everything you own is at risk. And the business ends when you die because you are the business. So then after that, you've got partnerships, LLPs, and LLCs. So partnerships are two or more individuals coming together for the purpose of making a profit. You don't have to formalize. You don't have to file anything. I'm not going to recommend that. No, you need to have written documents, but you don't have to. The court can say you're in a partnership even if you don't think you are, just because you look like one and you act like one. So the advantage is with a partnership, everything gets passed through, all the profits and losses pass through to the individual partner's income tax returns. Disadvantage, again, is unlimited personal liability. So I talked in class about why Arthur Andersen no longer exists. And it's because of the one partner who was involved with Enron and I believe WorldCom. And all of the partners around the world were held responsible for that one partner's actions. So then in the 1990s, the legal creative nirvana of Wyoming created the LLP, the LP, and the LLC as to create kind of this middle ground between a partnership where you've got the great taxation, but you've got the really terrible liability treatment, and the corporation where you've got your liability is limited to your investment, but you've got double taxation. So the LLC, the LLP, and the LP kind of fall in the middle there. Now with the limited partnership, the key is to get limited liability. The limited partners basically have to be silent investors. They put their money in and then they run the other direction, because the moment they do anything that acts like they are involved in management, they're now a partner and they're 100% liable for everything that happens. You also have to have a general partner who is 100% liable for everything that happens. These are the reasons I never wanted to be a partner in a law firm, because I just did not want to be responsible for other people I can't control. Now, an LLP, innocent partners are shielded. You still have to have one general partner, but the innocent partners who weren't involved in the bad acts are protected. And so they can lose their investment, but their personal assets aren't going to be at risk. The LLC takes care of that unlimited personal liability. It acts like a corporation in that respect, but the taxes are still treated as pass-through. So the disadvantage to an LLC is the self-employment tax for the managing member. And there's no way around it. I haven't found one yet. And that's after talking to a lot of CPAs. So corporations, when I invest in Microsoft, when I invest in a corporation, the only amount that I can lose is what I've invested. So all my personal assets aren't at risk. So this is a huge advantage to the corporate structure. The disadvantage is you get the double taxation. So in class, I ran an example to show you kind of the differences and distinctions of that. And that does make a difference in what the shareholders are going to have available to them as dividends. Joint ventures are a partnership, but they're for a specific purpose. So I gave you the examples of a construction project, like a major construction project that's going to be big enough that one company may not be able to do it on its own, or pharmaceuticals where you've got a little lab that has the new patent, but you have the bigger company that has the marketing, sales, and the infrastructure to get through FDA trials and things like that. So they come together for the purpose of that specific drug. And then once that drug comes out of patent protection, they are no longer in business together. So it's a partnership, usually between companies, for a specific purpose. All right, unincorporated associations, the example I gave you in class was like a swim team, a little league baseball team, kids soccer. So it's not going to be incorporated as a company or as a partnership, but it's two or more people coming together for a common purpose. And in those situations, everybody is liable for whatever doesn't get paid. So you might want to consider whether or not that's a great idea. All right, then cooperatives. These are an exception to when we were talking about antitrust in Chapter 5. Cooperatives are an exception to that, and it's almost always going to be food-related. So the examples I gave in class were Ocean Spray Cranberries, Tropicanoe Orange Juice, and then the grain bin cooperatives that you'll see along the highways around Indiana and other agricultural states. Basically, Congress decided that farmers, in order to be able to negotiate with the large companies like Cargill, ADM, things like that, they needed to be able to band together so they could get bargaining power. And so it's an exception to the antitrust regulations. And then there's franchises. I like franchises. This is how my family makes its money, is through the franchise structure. So franchises, the franchisor usually needs a capital influx. So we talked about McDonald's and how there's 37,000 McDonald's around the world. McDonald's corporate does not want the headache of trying to manage all of those. They can't. They also probably can't get the capital for all of those stores. So the franchise structure allows them to sell the name, the trademark, or actually it's licensing them, but they enter into a contract with people like my dad to come along and run these different businesses, and it gets the franchisor, the corporate office, a liability protection from what's happening in those franchise stores. And this is really important. The National Labor Relations Board is trying to do away with this through joint employment. And if that happens, it's probably going to kill the franchise structure. So this was a really big push at the end of the Obama administration. Nothing has happened with it under the Trump administration, but I keep watching it because I expect that at some point it'll come back up again. So some important things to keep in mind when looking at a franchise agreement is, do you as the franchisee get a exclusive territory? Otherwise, you're competing with other franchisees within your chain, and you don't want that. So you really want to pay attention to that. You get the right to use the trademarks, the trade dress, the trade name, the trade secrets of the franchisor, and then you have obligations to live up to their standards and things like that. That's why you can go to McDonald's in Germany and you're going to get air conditioning and you're going to get ice in your Coke when nowhere else in Germany is going to serve you ice with your beverage. Okay. That's all pretty self-explanatory. I'm not too concerned about automobile franchises, so you don't need to worry about that slide. Franchisors do have to give disclosures 14 days before the franchisee signs the agreement. That just lets them know, here's what you're signing, here's what you get. And so that's important to follow. And the vicarious liability, that's why the franchise system exists. So the case in the textbook relates to a 15-year-old who goes to work at McDonald's. It's a party environment where they're selling drugs and stuff through the drive-thru. Her father sues McDonald's, the franchisee, but also McDonald's corporate, because who has the deeper pockets? Corporate does. And the court says you can't sue the corporation because it's a franchise. So there's no vicarious liability. That is what could be affected. Okay. That's it. Wow, I did it. So that's pretty amazing. It's not going to let me highlight on here. So I'll probably post something on the course about that shows kind of the chart, but you want to understand how those compare and relate to each other. That will be important on the exam.